Good morning or night, not sure when you're listening to this. It's morning for me. I did my workout this morning, and before I did, I woke up to a text from a student who's enrolled in my Building a Body Practice class. This class teaches women how to be consistent in showing up to their body, but do it in a nurturing and loving way. So I woke up to this series of questions from her, and they were amazing questions. They were really awesome. This class is for two types of people, and I'm going to get into what I'm going to share really quickly. It's the person who is very feelings oriented, has a hard time being consistent, following through, has a hard time showing up to themselves, but might more easily show up to other people. That person might be a little more scattered, a little more unstructured and chaotic in their life, have a hard time feeling grounded, have a hard time feeling like their mind is clear on a day-to-day basis. And so showing up to workouts becomes very hard for that person because they're more oriented to their emotions, and their emotions are fluctuating. So it's hard for them to be stable and grounded and think in terms of plans and structure and long term, because they're more in the moment with their feelings. That person tends to be a little bit more representing the feminine energy and might be coming from more of a wounded feminine place. On the Enneagram, this person might be a type 4, might be a type 2, depending, I mean, there's so many ways that a type 2 is super structured and follows through. But if someone is more in touch with their feelings, even type 9s might have this issue. It can be really hard to be consistent and show up. But how to do it in a nurturing way is where the other type of person that benefits from this class comes in. There might be a person who is very consistent and very disciplined, but are they doing it from a nurturing place? So I have a group of women in this class the group of women that are in this class right now are half and half. It's like half of them are very diligent, very process oriented, and do follow their plans and do show up, but they're also very hard on themselves, and they don't save a lot of room for the softer, gentler way of being. They might run themselves into burnout quite a lot. They might get sick often. They might feel a lot of pressure to perform. So this class teaches women how to be consistent but in a nurturing way, and that's going to appeal to people who are totally have trouble showing up, and then people who do show up but don't do it from a nurturing place. Some of the questions that I got this morning were, when I first started fitness, coming from a girl who was very artistic, very much into her books, into her artwork, into fashion, but I was not interested in going to the gym and doing anything in a regimented way. I was very much on the side of feminine, wounded feminine, very over-identified with emotions, had bouts of depression regularly that would take me off course, had never really followed through in big goals with myself, and kind of felt chaotic and scattered. Didn't really feel like I had roots or a home base inside of myself. I was sort of a wreck, kind of all over the place. This student was asking, what were some practical things that you did when you started showing up to your workouts, and in what ways did you draw upon your healthy masculine and quiet the wounded feminine within you? I sent this person a long text because it really generated so many thoughts, and I really like this question. And so I want to share with you a little bit and just kind of continue that conversation with you. So one of the things that really stood out to me when I first started working out, and I had not worked out before. I know I've told you this before, but I went to a high school that didn't have sports. I went to an art high school, so it just sports and being consistent and follow through were just not part of my world. I didn't really think in terms of goals. I didn't think in terms of plans or taking action steps to reach a goal. When I started fitness, what I first realized was how weak I felt. On a physical level, yes, obviously, because I had never worked out, I felt very weak, but I also felt weak mentally. I felt like it was exposing a part of me that I had never seen before, which was I'm disconnected from my body and I'm disconnected from the power of my mind. I had always been in touch with my emotions, and those emotions had painted my world, painted my reality, painted my day-to-day actions. If I felt like doing something, I did it. If I felt like, doing something different, then I do something different. So I didn't really have a sense of following a plan to reach a goal. That was a new mental perspective that started for me when I first started doing CrossFit and working out. And I really didn't like it. I didn't like the feeling of being so disconnected from those two parts of myself. I also really didn't like to work out. For the first 6 months, I almost quit almost every day. I wanted to cancel my membership. But some part of me kept feeling like this is important, and I kind of felt like I needed to overcome that challenge that I was having with seeing how weak I was and really feeling weak and just doing something in the moment that I didn't really want to do because of some future benefit that it would cause, which was health and strength and being a more robust human being, not just physically. So I stuck with it, and I think what I started to, when I think about wounded feminine and being a type 4 on the Enneagram, what I started to do without realizing it then was move towards more of a healthy masculine and move towards the type 1 in terms of the high side of type 1 on the Enneagram being more values oriented and less emotions focused, being more practical and process oriented rather than fluctuating with the change of my emotions and the currents of my mood. There were also very unhealthy traits that began in my fitness journey, so it wasn't all like this enlightened progressive way of being. I also had a lot of ego involved in why I got into fitness and continued that way. But I'm going to separate that out and just tell you about the high side of that movement so that you can use that for your own consistency and fitness practice. So basically, one of the things I stopped doing was hanging out with people who were into partying, because that's what I had done a lot of. And I kind of feel like I had been in those days like sort of a lost soul, like someone who sought fulfillment and connection through drugs and alcohol and tumultuous relationships. And I wasn't secure in myself, and I wasn't stable I wasn't like grounded within. So I found myself in sort of like, I just got swept up in this lifestyle of being sort of unhealthy, staying up late, and really looking forward to going to parties and getting drunk and all that. And so I had a lot of friends who, were in that lifestyle as well. But when I started getting into fitness, I really started to value the feelings that I would get. So again, a emphasis on feelings, attention and focus on feelings. I started to value the feelings that I would get after I worked out versus after I partied. Because after you drink and, you're up late and, it's kind of like a hard way to live, and you feel sort of drained and a little depressed, and you have to do a lot of things to keep that high going. Not just talking about drugs, but talking about just the high of being in a party scene, and then the next morning there's this down period, and it can be a really depressing place. And I really didn't value that as much anymore when I realized that working out gave me a really good feeling, and there were no like negative side effects. There was no down from it other than being tired and being sore. But I liked it. It felt kind of like I'm accomplishing something, and I felt powerful. So there was this shift in values in terms of like, I would rather feel this way, and I want to do things that are going to support me to feel more of that, versus I'm going to keep sabotaging myself and hurting my body. And so, so I started to decline invitations for things to do with partying. And of course, because of that, in those days, I lost some friends. And it was painful. It was hard to, be in disagreement with friends and to be told that I'm not a good friend, and to have people in my life say really hurtful things because I was pulling back. And it, of course, I think would feel like I thought I was better because I wasn't doing those lower level things anymore. But the reality is I wanted a better life for myself. I didn't want to party, and I didn't want to do all the things I used to do. So naturally, there was a shift in the people that I started hanging out with, and that wasn't easy. But I was starting to value myself a little bit more than I had done in the past. One of the other things that changed was a focus on food, and not just the taste of it, but what will it give me. I started learning about macronutrients and learning about like what things would help me put muscle on. And a lot of times those things were completely opposite of what I had been eating in the past. So I had been really unaware of health, or at least not focused on it. And as I started getting more into fitness, I realized there's going to be certain foods that allow me to progress and do better and feel better. And so that became more of a priority over just taste alone. So a huge shift. And again, this is a goal-oriented way of viewing food. This was also a future-oriented way of viewing what I ate. So I think overall there also was a shift in future orientation versus in the present moment. Because in the moment, if we're just living in the moment, we just want the food because it tastes so good in that moment, without consideration for what it could be doing to your health. Or you might say yes to the party and go hang out with that friend because it seems like fun, but there's no future mindset about what are the repercussions of that. So I started to be more future oriented, and I believe that is a healthy masculine trait. The healthy masculine within us will help us to see into the future and then backtrack and say, okay, to get there, what steps do I need to take from where I am now? So the ability to see our future self and our current self and like line up those two dimensions is part of the healthy masculine operating in us. Whereas before I had only worked in the feminine, very much in the present, whatever feels good right now, and however I want to do it at this moment, and not any regard for the future. So there's a couple of things already. What else? So another thing was, some of the mindset that shifted was based around the idea of mental toughness, which I had never looked into before. I had never thought about it. I had never thought about training your mind like a muscle. And I realized because my mind was very weak, because I was a heart-centered person and not a mental-centered person, I could train my mind with one of the first books I read, which I don't necessarily, unless you've never heard of mental toughness before, I don't necessarily recommend it. It's still one of my favorite books because it was a life-changing book for me. But where I am now in my consciousness, it's not as useful as like if I read it today and I had never read it before, it wouldn't do as much for me. But because mental toughness was a totally new concept and world, this book was really helpful. So it was called Unbeatable Mind by Mark Divine. And so again, that book is very much in the masculine, and I wouldn't say it's you know, it could be helpful to you. I don't know. But what I learned about that was we can train mental toughness, and it was ways to train that, to train the skill of being tough mentally, making ourselves do something because we want to progress to some future outcome. Another concept that was new to me that I started getting more interested in and doing research on was neuroplasticity, the science that our brain can change, and we can change the way our neurons fire, which means that we can change the way we think, and our brain is, again, like a muscle. We can shape it. So that was really eye-opening to me. Again, very much in the mental realm, which I just hadn't lived that way before. And then finally, the idea of human potential, that we all have potential, and that we can progress ourselves and grow and be our best selves. And what is our best self? And it's this idea that sure, we're totally worthy just as we are, but we can also increase our value, we can increase our self-respect, and we can inspire others through the idea of human potential and rising up to that, to that calling within. So those were things that I think really helped me take off in that time period when I was transitioning from being very feelings oriented, having a hard time staying routine with anything, had never really thought about goals or future, to starting to shift all that and move in a more try to be more balanced. I was really becoming more balanced. So on the Enneagram, that is the journey of a type 4 to 1, which is the child heart point or arrow against. And I don't know if Enneagram is interesting to you, but if it is, you can reach out to me and we can do an assessment and find out what your Enneagram subtype is and your type, and then that will give us a lot of insight into how you can grow. But for me, going to 1 was very important because I was a 4. So if you know anything about the Enneagram, you understand. But I think the system of understanding the feminine, the masculine, the wounded feminine and masculine, and the divine feminine and masculine can also be really a useful system in understanding how do we get ourselves to be consistent, but in a nurturing way. So those schools of thoughts were helpful to me in those times. Also, the concept of, if you have a wish or a dream, that's great. But the only way you're going to get the wish or the dream is by a plan and by following the plan. So I started having a goal about fitness, and one of the goals was I want to be able to deadlift 200 pounds. Well, that's great, but how are you going to do it? Well, you have to train deadlift at least once a week, and you have to make sure your back is strong, and you have to make sure your technique is right. So what I was learning in fitness was a way to be process-oriented and follow through with an action plan in order to achieve my goals. So if your goal is to lose weight, or if your goal is to become more tone, or if your goal is to add more muscle or just feel more energetic in your body, or if your goal is to gain weight, whatever your goal is about why you want to be consistent in the first place with working out or any kind of body practice, you have to see that the only way you'll see to it is if there's a plan and if you follow the plan. So there's 2 steps. It's like I realized I have to do this work. And so I started having kind of sayings that I would say to myself, or I borrowed from someone else, but they became my sayings. And one of them was, just show up and do the work. Put your head down and do the work. And that was a really useful way of thinking about it, because I couldn't put so much emphasis on the day-to-day. I had to just see long-term. So if I put my head down and do the work, and I do that every day, eventually I'll pull my head up, look back and see, oh my God, I've made progress. I actually see that I'm getting closer to my goal, or I see the composition change in my body. But if I continue to think about each day as a very significant moment, then I'm going to get lost in the day and not realize that there's a plan here that we're following. I need to have trust in that process. So put your head down and do the work was something I started to kind of say to myself more. Another thing was just this, again, like kind of a saying that whatever I do consistently over time will yield results. So again, there's this trust in the process kind of theme, that if I do this consistently over time, I will get to the outcome, but it has to be done consistently and over time. I'm not going to do it twice and then skip, and then another time and then skip again and see results. That's just not going to happen. It had to be consistent, and it had to be enough time to see the results. So I kind of started to see my workout sessions as just putting time in, putting more time in. It's like a bank, like I'm just adding more, I'm not looking at if I see results or not, because I knew mentally now that if I do it, I will get results. So there had to be trust in the process, even when I wasn't seeing results right away, because results take a long time. Getting to a deadlift to 200 pounds takes a long time, and my max ended up becoming 340-pound deadlift. That's really heavy. Well, it didn't just happen by accident. It happened because I was putting consistent time into it for years eventually. And then the byproduct of having those fitness goals was my composition also started to change a lot. So at first, I just wanted to learn how to do double unders, a certain type of jump rope style. I wasn't thinking about losing weight or shedding, excess fat or toning up. I really was thinking about more of these performance goals rather than like a composition goal. So I also hated that I couldn't do a strict push-up. So I really wanted to learn to do strict push-ups and get strong enough to do those. So of course my arms got more muscular, but I wasn't focused on my arms changing. I was focused on, I want to be able to do this thing because it made me feel strong and empowered. So overall, fitness helped me get in touch with a masculine side of me that I hadn't known before, which was this sense of strength and power, a feeling of really extreme, not extreme, but very it's hard to explain, but like life force moving through me. The exhilarating feeling of being alive and feeling your body and feeling your muscles and feeling, your body rise in heat and sweat comes out and hearing your breathing. All of this was such a new way of feeling alive. And I think that's a very divine masculine way of understanding life. It's just that there's so much force of life, and we are an expression of that. And I can really feel that when I'm working out. That was all starting to come to me. So I had never felt like a badass before. I had never felt like I could, do hard things. But this was showing me that I have capabilities. If I can do that hard thing, I can do this hard thing. If I can finish this workout that I didn't think was possible for me, then maybe I can start coaching and learning how to be a coach. It allowed me to take some next big steps in my life and see these things through because I learned how to do it in fitness. So yeah, that hopefully is somewhat inspiring. And one more thing is I also started to learn how to be a leader and an example to myself. I had never been a leader. I had never thought of myself as a leader or an example to anyone, but I also had never felt that for myself. I had never valued myself enough to even like think of myself that way or to strive to be that. But through fitness, I really started to learn that, you know, I can have these values and this integrity, and it's really inspiring to me, and I want to be that person. And then it felt, you know, of course, great to have people who were inspired by me and who were telling me that I help them stay motivated through being me, through my own story, through my own actions. So it was kind of like a perpetuated cycle where I'm inspiring myself, and then I'm inspiring others, and they're giving me positive feedback, and I'm feeling better about my life. And I, of course, want to continue feeling that way. And I think that's sort of the human potential side of things is, it's almost like, why not? Like, let's just do it all. Let's do the fitness health. Let's do the mental health. Let's do the emotional health. And let's keep pushing ourselves and getting curious about how we can improve, and really rise up to the highest level of humanness that we can. And it's multi-layered, of course. So fitness was just one of them. And up until that point, it had been badly neglected. But man, it was such an awakening in itself. And then, of course, you know, there were things that still lingered in my life. So I wasn't like this totally confident, awesome human being for forevermore. You know, like I said in the last video, healing comes in layers. So that was one layer of healing that was huge, huge, huge. And then a couple years went by, and I still had some really big emotional and mental work to do. But fitness helped me in so many ways that it was all just kind of different layers. All right, I'll see you. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna start saying this now. So I do post daily on YouTube. And if you want to get my daily videos, just subscribe to this channel and share this video with anyone who you think could benefit from the message. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye.